All right, let's fast forward to Saturday, April 27th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. North Carolina Courage host, not yours, but some people's, Seattle Reign FC. What are you going to be looking for in this one?
Yes, my beat as an unbiased reporter, the Seattle Reign
That's
FC, surely. Been a rough stretch for Seattle. They've lost 4 matches on the spin. Started the year off with a win over those Washington Spirit that we talked about. Washington Spirit minus Trinity Rodman, but a good win nonetheless to open the year. And then they've gone ahead and lost 4 matches in a row. The offense has looked rough. The link-up play has been kind of ugly to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, I don't think anybody on the Reign run away from that. They know they need to be better in some spots there. Bright spot, the defense has looked strong. I don't think you expect anything less from a defensive backline that boasts Sophia Huerta, Alana Cook, and Lou Barnes. You're guaranteed to get great minutes out of them. But your boy was in the building for the last Seattle Reign match, that loss against the Chicago Red Stars. And in the post-match press conference, I asked Laura Harvey how veteran players like Jess Fishlock and Lou Barnes can help the squad get out of a rough stretch like this. Because in that match against Chicago, Mel Swanson was a world beater, but it looked like Fishlock and Barnes were probably the 2 best players for the Reign on that day. She gave me a little bit of coach speak, to just be totally honest, which I expect. You expect them to kind of give that to you. But I thought her answer was pretty interesting when I asked, like, okay, you got some vets on this team. What do they do to help you break this run of kind of bad form, at least this run of losses? And here's what she said, and I quote, "They show up. I think they show up in different ways. And today, I think they showed up on the field," referring to Fishlock and Barnes specifically. She went on to say something that I thought was very interesting. Quote, "I said to the players at the end of the game, the second half, that's who we have to be right now. And is that the pretty football you saw when we beat Washington? No. But is it effective? Yeah. We had something like 34 crosses in the game," referring to the match against Chicago. "That's who we are. But we have to take those opportunities. You can't put 34 crosses into an opponent and not score from them. So I think we're just finding the balance of who we are and those veteran players just showing up in the ways that they do on and off the field. I think that will always push us forward." End quote. So clear frustration with the attack, but I mean, she talked about that kind of being the Reign's brand of football, where we're going to pin you down on defense, we're going to make everything hard for you, and then we're going to cross the ball in. We just need people to get on the end of those crosses. So I'm looking for that in the match against the Courage, but after a cross-country flight from Seattle to North Carolina, and North Carolina playing at home, I think it's going to be a tall order, but you definitely don't want to lose 5 matches in a row.
That would be rough. Looking at this North Carolina team, some pretty interesting trends. They've got 3 wins on the season, all 3 at home, and they've played 2 road matches, 0-2 on the road, 2 losses. So I think the other thing to look at with this North Carolina side, you look at their 3 wins. They beat the Dash, smashed them 5-1. Then they blanked Gotham FC 1-0 and Portland 2-0. Those are both at home, as mentioned. So my brain is kind of thinking through, all right, who is Gotham? Who is Portland? Are these good teams in a bad stretch, or are these mediocre teams, or are these bad teams? Because I think once you lump Houston in there with regard to the teams that North Carolina has beaten, if they beat 3 mediocre or bad, it means something a little bit different.
Yep.
Last few weeks, you look at those performances, you're like, okay, wow, North Carolina, we've got to put them. I think they might have been up in that second tier, if I'm not mistaken, last go around.
Yeah.
But I think obviously they've got their vulnerabilities. They like to possess the ball. Still missing Caroline, so the attack sometimes could leave a little bit to be desired. Obviously they didn't score as much as they would have liked to against Angel City. So we'll just kind of see if that trend continues. And then to your point, if Seattle was able to kind of stumble onto something in terms of a formula for playing some winning football, like you mentioned, it's tough to drop a 5th in a row. So I think there might be a little bit extra motivation there just to kind of stop the bleeding a bit.
I think so. I mean, a big bright spot for the Reign also, Ziara King came off the bench and scored an absolute banger of a goal. Laser with the left foot, upper 90, off an assist from Fishlock, if memory serves. Had some folks on Seattle Reign FC Twitter that I am loosely a part of clamoring for more minutes for King. So we'll see if that kind of happens. You got to stop the bleeding somehow, but also, we're still 5 games in. if there is a time to lose your fifth in a row, it might as well be the sixth match of the season. You still don't like it, but at least there's some time to recover. But eventually you start getting into scary hours.
Playoff landscape expands to 8 teams this season. So currently, even with the sort of dreadful start, the Reign are just 1 win out of the playoffs. AFC's on 6 points. The Reign's on 3.
There you go.
So yeah, a win would be huge here. A draw, like you mentioned, stops the skid.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you'll have your eyes on that one. And props to you, man, for a couple things. One, being in the building and putting the pressure on Coach Harvey, holding her accountable in true ITC fashion.
That's what I was doing.
You've definitely been out here on the Ziara King, driving that bandwagon as well for more minutes. And that was my first thought. Well, my first thought was like, holy shit, what a goal. Second thought was my guy was on it. He's been asking for more minutes since I think pretty much week 1. So yeah, props to you, 2 for 2 this week.
I appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, I like I say a lot of things. Some of them end up being right, and I will make sure that the shoulder is nice and loose so I don't hurt myself patting myself on the back.
Hit a little Pilates, stay loose out there. All right, let's fast forward 30 minutes into Saturday evening. The Chicago Red Stars hosting the Portland Thorns. I mean, obviously you saw Chicago pretty up close and personal. I continue to think that Mallory Swanson is just one of the most dynamic, wondrous players on the planet, basically. And you have Alyssa Nair having turned around her form within the NWSL, maybe on the heels of some international performances. And I think when you look at the XG situation, Chicago on offense outperforming their XG, which is 4.7, and they've got 7 real goals.
Yep.
That kind of feels pretty Swanson-y. And then on defense, XG is 6.9, but they've only actually given up 4 goals. So maybe I'm being a little bit reductionist, but I think the combination of, Donaldson, Swanson, and Nair, the data's sort of supporting a little bit, but also the eye test as well. You saw this Chicago team. What did I get right? What did I get wrong?
The fact that you use the word dynamic is the exact right word. And I know people, in business like to use the word dynamic, and usually they're full of shit. Using it in a football sense here, 100% correct. Using dynamic to describe the way they're playing, and especially to describe the way Mel Swanson is playing, she's absolutely playing herself into the form of an undeniable one of the best strikers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty easy. She's a one-woman offense out there. Everybody has to be terrified of her. And when you focus on her, now Allison Schlegel is open and available to knock home timely goals. I think they're a scary team. I think you're 100% right about this. I want to shout out a couple of the players on their back line. 26-year-old right back Tatum Milazzo had a critical block right off the line, like as good as a goal. Pulls the ball right off the line, and when Seattle was really pressing in the last 15 or 20 minutes in that match. We've talked about Sam Staub, just an established veteran, an excellent player in this league for a long time. We know Lauren Donaldson's pedigree as a defensive-minded coach, somebody who's able to kind of put together a back four and help them stay organized. And then you already know what time it is with Alyssa Nair. God forbid you get to the playoffs and you have to go into penalties against Alyssa Nair, because I think we all know how that's going to end up. So, yeah, I mean, they're threatening. Put me in the bin as a Chicago Red Stars believer. I think they're bubbling up. I think they're making the playoffs. Eventually, I'll have to be held accountable. Some journalist will have to hold me accountable on what 8 teams I think are actually going to make the playoffs. But when you have Swanson out there playing like that around the players they have around her, they're making the playoffs, in my view.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think referring to Swanson as a one-woman offense is absolutely fucking on point. Perfect way to describe it. I wonder if she's sort of knocking on the door to the MVP conversation. You look at the one match that she missed against Angel City, a little bit of an outlier result.
Sure.
She's not in. They get blanked against a mediocre team. She's in. She looks fucking like a world beater. So I think that kind of qualifies as in the MVP conversation. I looked it up here, and it turns out, when is it too early to start talking MVP? Turns out it's never too early. 5 weeks in, we could talk about it. Let's fucking go.
All right. Sure. I like it. And I want to say, because I guess we shouldn't call her a one-woman offense without citing that Schlegel goal in the 4th minute of the match against the Reign. Mel Swanson picks up the ball like a yard or two outside of her own 18 and
Yeah.
drives fucking 80 yards before laying the pass off to Schlegel. And she's just flying. And I'm in the press box just like, okay, so nobody's going to try to ball stop here. But nobody is able to get in the way. And people are kind of worried because she's such a good passer that they're kind of trying to watch out. That was an incredible run that happened. Somehow it felt like it happened in slow motion, but in the blink of an eye at the same time.
That run was incredible. Like, you rarely see a run where she's getting more and more open the farther she runs.
Right.
Or like, it wasn't like they were closing her down. She was like just separating even more, and she's got the ball driving it forward. Real Steph Curry vibes. Obviously, other people are going to score. When somebody's got that much gravity, that just kind of opens things up. And she could have had 3 goals. I think she had one just kiss the line, like off the bottom of the crossbar, and a couple other really good looks. And I think she's just must watch for me. I think she's kind of at that level. Once we start talking all 11s here at NWSL, I'm not sure how early. It's too early to do that. Maybe mid-season we might roll that out. I kind of feel comfortable having her on that very, very short list.
Gotta be. Yeah, I'm totally with you. And you know what? You checked the first one. When is it too early to do all 11s? Never too early to do that either. So you know what? We can talk about that whenever the fuck we want. We make the rules around here.
Let's go.
No IFAB getting in our way. We're making the rules.
Section 11, A, go somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the team that they are hosting, the Portland Thorns. What is going on in Portland?
They're off the schneid, if you will. Can we use that? You know I love a good sports cliche. Yeah, they pick up a 4-1 win over Houston. Not great times in Houston right now. It doesn't matter if you're Portland. You don't have the luxury of looking at it like, well, it was a 4-1 win, but it was over Houston. No. Everybody in that Portland dressing room that was a 4-1 win. We're back. We know we have great players. We're getting this thing turned around. Who else could it have been to get them off said schneid other than the legend herself, Christine Sinclair, scoring the opening goal? I saw it floating around Twitter. Amazing stat alert. Christine Sinclair has scored in every season of the NWSL's existence. And so for her to continue that streak in the final season of her retirement, I think everybody knew it was a done deal. She was going to get at least one this year. Great to see her get it. Shout out to the legend. But yeah, they have too many good players. Amazing to see Moultrie get on the score sheet. I think we're in for another banger. And if it's going to be happening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, I don't know if it's after dark, but it's NWSL heading into dark. It's a chaos league, as everybody says too. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out.
I like it. Yeah. And I think got to feel good for Portland to see their big-ish name players kind of come through. Moultrie, Becky, Sophie Smith, Sinclair.
Damn.
We talked about in our NWSL show, the different kind of 3-2s, different kind of 4-1s also. It does feel good when it feels like everybody's kind of in rhythm. It's a thorough, much, much needed win, but they're going to get tested this week heading to Chicago. It's going to be really interesting to see if they're able to kind of keep that form and how they would contend with a one Mal Swanson. And then obviously if they can break all the way through, there's Alyssa Nair waiting for them. So big time test for Portland. Going to be a good barometer.
I'm going to call it, I expect to see four-time defensive player of the year, Becky Sauerbrunn. She makes light of these things on her podcast with Sam Mewis. She's not nearly as fast as Mal Swanson. Give me the over on 1.5 Becky Sauerbrunn fouls on Mal Swanson. Just foul her, Becky. Because I would just take my chances with the free kick. I think that's going to be important. I think Sam Coffey, ITC favorite Sam Coffey, she's going to have her hands full. I'm excited to see how she shows up because I got full faith in her to play as well as she can in a big spot like this.
Yeah, that's a great call out with Coffey. I think the one tricky part about Sauerbrunn is you got to catch Swanson to foul her.
That is true.
Be within arm's distance, and that's going to be a tall task in and of itself. So we'll be locked into that one Saturday evening. Let's head downstairs to the basement. Utah Royals hosting the Houston Dash, same time slot, Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. One thing that stuck out to me in this one, a lot of similarities when you look at the stats with regard to these two teams. XG is eerily similar. Utah's at 4.5 for 12.8 allowed. Houston at that same 4.5 and 11.5 allowed. These are the bottom two teams in goal differential as well. Utah's -7, Houston's -8. There's a couple teams at -3, so they're well behind the pack. I continue to be a little bit compelled by this Utah side. I think they're kind of like a tough-nosed team. Just talent-wise, they're kind of overmatched week in, week out. Ali Sentnor, she'll let her rip. That trend is continuing. Houston, you kind of wonder, Houston, now that they've moved on from Maria Sanchez, maybe that kind of like releases a little bit of the pressure. Some of the tension in the locker room, that could be, not great for chemistry. They've had some interesting moments at Houston. They obviously got that win at Bay FC, and they made a pretty nifty personnel move this week. What do we need to know about that one?
Yes. The Houston Dash signed Brazilian center back Tarciane from Corinthians.
Let's go.
You will likely recall her, this 20-year-old center back, from her excellent work in the CONCACAF W Gold Cup. They also signed center back Paige Nielsen from Angel City. Nielsen played the full 90 minutes in Angel City's first 3 matches. So in a world, and I feel like we've talked about this on past podcasts, like in a world where teams are going and trying to collect this superlative attacking talent, we were asking, like, who's going to be the team to start signing center backs, talented defensive players who can not only stop the attack, but then also kind of be a part of the buildup. It turns out Houston has kind of raised their hand and said, yeah, that's the direction that we're going to go with this. And I'm really interested to see how it works out. I think Nielsen is an interesting signing for sure, but Tarciane, I mean, let's go. Like, this is a great player to have in our league.
Yeah, I mean, she's already a great player. She stood out in those matches against USWNT.
For sure.
Like just kind of jumped off the screen.
Oh, yeah.
She's going to be ready to kind of slot right in. Houston's given up 14 goals this season, dead last in the league. They've been fairly productive, 6 goals on the year in 5 matches. That puts them ahead of 4 or 5 teams goal-wise, but defensively they've just been a turnstile. So if you move off of Sanchez, who's eating up a lot of their cap, they got a pretty decent haul for Sanchez as well.
Sure.
So considering that she might have maybe not been the right way to kind of spend that money, and then maybe chemistry-wise, who knows what's going on behind the scenes, then you kind of double down, you kind of move those chips over to that back line. I think Houston could be, I don't know. I don't want to say interesting, but I think they're kind of in that category where they're going to be competitive in spots.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think they end up making that final 8, but I wouldn't be shocked if they're in it in the last couple of weeks. We make fun of in the NFL parlance.
Let's go.
They might be in the hunt.
In the mix.
In the hunt.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Sure. Why not? Okay. I like that. I would like to know how anybody who works for the Houston Dash organization would absorb you saying, I don't want to say they're interesting, which is a funny way for them, like, oh, okay, that's a bridge too far. Thanks, bro. I totally hear what you're saying, though, is somebody had to try the zag. And the idea about Maria Sanchez, they were playing her in kind of like weird spots in the field where, like, I just kind of wanted to shake my television and be just like, just play her at left wing. Just put her at left wing. I don't know. What else do we do? What are you going to do? But, whether it's that allocation of the salary cap or whatever, I don't know if they were using her quite right, and that's why she asked out. I have a feeling, with no reporting, I feel like that is probably a part of it. So why not? Why not just be like, okay, we're going to make the trade. We're going to get some stuff back. Double down, as you put it. I think you're exactly right. We're going to put some chips on playing a defensive style. I think it's an interesting move, and it's hard for a team to make a pivot. So shout to them for making a pivot and at least picking a direction to go in.
I love it. The Royals, bottom of the standings right now, and the Dash are on 4 points. If they can go in there and get a win, which is not inconceivable considering the competition, that puts them, sort of in one of those playoff spots, potentially, depending on how the other matches shake out. So it might not be their season, but I mean, Tatiana is just such a up and coming, and not even up and coming is kind of a little bit selling her way short.
Yeah.
Because I think she's going to come in and already be really good.
For sure.
But I think there's just going to be so much more growth to her game. We talked about it with what's happening at KC, where it's like, when are we going to start seeing teams spend some money on the back line and being like, all right, if we're going to survive, we've got to start making some of these investments and have a plan for taking on some of these teams. So I think we kind of understand the kind of football that they want to play. And I like the 2 moves, actually 3 moves if you include the Nielsen signing.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens with this Houston team.
I'm all for it. I'll be excited to see it. You mentioned Utah, and you mentioned kind of prioritizing some defense. The Utah Royals also, before the deadline, they signed center back Ana Tejada from Real Sociedad, where she made 95 appearances for that club. Wow. And even though some folks out there might think Liga F might be a touch overrated, that's real experience for a player who had to go up against the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid and Levante out there. So the center back signings continue. I think your boys, we're speaking of cold takes. I mean, man, we're doing a lot of patting ourselves on the back. It's easy to do that when you're right about a lot of shit, I guess. But it seems like we're seeing kind of that reaction of like, okay, let's get some real talented defenders in here. And I also want to mention that Utah signed Emily Gray, midfielder, coming off and please, for anybody who like follows the Courage closely, can I call them disappointing seasons? I mean, I don't think she really jumped out from the Courage in those 2 seasons. Utah signed Emily Gray from the Courage, and she has a pedigree. I mean, she was the number 3 overall pick in 2022. So to see kind of Utah and Houston kind of jockeying for position down there at the bottom of the table, interesting signings. They're picking a direction and they're trying to move forward. So you got to respect that.
You know, you kind of got me perked up a little bit when you said Houston at the bottom of the table. Now I kind of feel myself becoming a little Houston Dash defender. I'm like, we're not at the bottom of the table. We're in 12th.
Okay, I mean, sure, okay.
I don't know. I felt a little something bubbling. It's interesting. I'm a little conflicted.
Well, look at you.
I'm glad you brought up. I'm glad you brought up Ana Tejada and her Liga F experience. Not only did she have to deal with Levante, she had to deal with Levante Las Planas.
Let's go.
I mean, come on.
Good club.
What the fuck? Let's go. They gave Barcelona all they can handle today.
Hell yeah.
So we'll watch this one, not super closely. We might not watch it live. Don't crush us. We might have to catch up a little bit on the replay. Shout out to NWSL Plus for continuing to up their technology game, although there was some hubbub today over the website and accessibility issues. Talk about that one later. Maybe we won't.
Sure.
Let's go ahead. San Diego Wave versus Bay FC. Battle of California. 2 of the 3 California teams going at it. Saturday in NWSL After Dark. 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific.
Let's go.
Where do we start with this one? What are you going to be looking for?
Fucking watching this game. This is a good Saturday night. 7 p.m. over here in Seattle. I mean, this is going to be a football game. Bay FC, they're starting to really warm up offensively. They had 2 goals in their first 2 matches, but they've had 7 in their most recent 3 matches.
Let's go.
I don't see any way that doesn't continue. I mean, Kundanaji, Oshwala, say less. They are going to score. Even with San Diego's great defense, 2-time reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Naomi Girma. Good luck with Kundanaji and Oshwala. I mean, it's going to be hard to keep him off the score sheet. I
mean, Girma's so good, but I feel like Girma shines in kind of like tighter spaces. And the fact that, real bummer, Alex Loera from Bay FC, Bay FC midfielder, torn ACL, obviously you'll remember the banger, the goal she scored against the Seattle Reign. We'll refer to them here on this pod.
I do recall that, yes.
Really tough loss for Bay FC. They're a little bit thin everywhere except all the way up front. So could be a lot of like kind of balls over the top to those 2 superstars. And I love Girma's game. For me, she's going to have her hands full, I think. Not just her, that whole San Diego back line. And offensively, not sure what's going on with San Diego. The production is just not there. The flow is not there.
Yeah.
The motion's not there. It just feels very, very stagnant. I mean, you kind of feel like they're going to turn it around. I think Jaden Shaw is a little bit of like the key to kind of unlock what's happening.
Yep.
Because it's pretty clear her skills are not really being utilized. Now, you got Sanchez. We'll figure out where Sanchez is going to play. But it does kind of feel like Jaden Shaw, once we figure out, all right, how can we have her maybe be more of the initiator? She's so smart. She's so offensive, attack-minded. She's so dangerous. It does feel like once they figure out how to get her the ball, figure out where to put her and how to get her the ball, things could really open up for San Diego.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what I want to see. You put Jaden Shaw in the middle of the pitch. You have to. And I hope that part of the Waves' strategy in signing Maria Sanchez is to play her on the left wing. Like I said, what I hoped to see. Houston do. I hope San Diego follows through with that. And the thing about Sophia Jakobsen, I know she's got a lot of time at left wing. She's a right-footed player. You can play her on the right wing. Sophia Jakobsen is an established veteran. I think she's 34 years old, Swedish international, has played in big matches. You can trust her on the right wing as a right-footed player playing balls into the middle. So put Shaw in the middle of the field, play Morgan at number 9, play Sanchez on the left wing, play Jakobsen on the right wing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying this like while I do admit, yes, I am a simpleton. I want to say that I am oversimplifying this. Let's just see how that looks when you put those players in some natural positions that can actually fit with them, with their style of play. And let's go from there, because I'm totally in the camp of kind of what you had mentioned earlier. I'm not giving up on this San Diego team. They just have way too many good players to look like they've looked for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think even Jakobsen, like when I kind of replay the moments that I remember from her this season, they're pretty much taking somebody on one-on-one.
Yep.
Creating a chance where there probably was no chance.
Right.
Very low X chance. She turns it into an actual chance.
Right. That's a good call.
But I think there's still, the chemistry is not totally there. I don't think it's any one player. It's just maybe a lot of new moving parts. Sanchez, a new one. The season isn't that long. That's the other part.
Sure.
You mentioned it. 526 of the way through the season. That's roughly 20%.
Sure.
So there's time. Not that much time. The turnaround's got to start pretty quickly here. Obviously, they make the big personnel move to bring Sanchez in. But now it's going to be on Casey Stoney to figure out, all right, how do we make all this shit work? Because we've got talent here, and the talent has far outpaced, the productivity.
Understanding that just because Bay FC is an expansion team doesn't mean that every player on there is a rookie or it doesn't have incredible experience. It's their first year together. It's the infrastructure of the club's first year together. Prime time, lights are bright. You're playing against one of the premier franchises in the league. Let's see it. You're doing it. You're the second half of the Saturday night doubleheader. How are you going to show up?
Yeah, and I think if Bay FC is able to pull a result here, that's going to be, kind of huge for that Battle of California. It's really going to be carving out some territory type feel. The thing with Bay FC, you know how they want to play.
Yeah.
They want to get the ball up. They want to give those forwards a chance. And on set pieces, they want to utilize the gravity of those forwards to open up stuff for other players. Pretty straightforward recipe, but one that even if you know it's coming, very hard to stop. So I think this one's going to be maybe one of the more compelling matchups this weekend.
For sure. I love the Battle of California stuff. I mean, again, to reference college football, that's like some old school Steve Spurrier being like, win the state of Florida, you can win it all. You know what I mean? That is great. And if you win the state of California in the NWSL, you have a great look at making the playoffs and making a deep run.